Okay, well, we can start and more people will probably pop on as we're going. So we generally start meetings with an introductory question that you just introduce yourself, say what you do for a living, and then you can answer the question. So the question is, where would you rather vacation? Mountains, beach, desert, or like a lake or river? And I'll start. I'm Evie Wright. I work for NTU Technologies, and I am the president of SI Davis this year. And I would vacation at the beach because I like swimming in the ocean. So I don't go to the beach to sit on the beach. I go to the beach to get in the water. So that's me. Okay, Phyllis.
I can't make up my mind. Push comes to shove, I'd love to go to the mountains. I think it's because I've lived by the beach my whole life, and going someplace different where I could go hiking appeals to me. I'm a plant pathologist at UC Davis, and I work at the Seed Biotechnology Center. And glad to have Courtney here as our guest.
Thank you. Diana Schmiegel.
Hi, I'm Diana Schmiegel, and I'm retired from the state. And I've been retired 5 years now in January. It's kind of went a little fast. I'm going to say the beach, and I'm not like Evie. I don't go on the water, but I like to walk on the beach and just go for a long walk. My one son lives in San Diego, and we have to walk the beach every time I'm there, even if he wants to or not. So.
Thank you. Diana Harvey.
Diana Harvey, currently basically not doing much for work. I'm just consulting with Summer House on some stuff on a program I was working with.
You want to call?
As needed.
Yeah.
Obviously, beach is my choice.
Even where you are.
So much I decided to move to an island with lots and lots of beaches. And a towel in the car, I can go anytime I want, on the fly. I love it.
Cool. All right, thank you. Marnie.
Okay, I lived in Davis for a long time. I'm retired from what I currently was doing. The only reason we live in Davis because we're halfway from the beach and the mountains. So we can go to either. That's not the only reason, but it's a benefit. So I like both of them.
Ooh, she picks two answers. Thank you. Leah?
I'm Leah Rosenberg, and I am with the Rosenberg Group, and I serve on a couple of boards here in Davis. And I would pick, because Dave grew up at Atlantic City on the boardwalk in the old days when it was cool, the beach.
Cool. I didn't know Dave grew up in AC.
Oh, yeah. He has fond memories of Mr. Peanut on the boardwalk.
Oh, I love that. Thank you. Carol.
Hi, Carol McDonald, Navion Financial Advisors. And I like both beach or mountains. I love to swim in the ocean. I grew up going to Huntington Beach all summer in LA area. And I love the mountains. I have to get my mountain fix. And Marnie, that's one of the things I love about this valley is that it's so close to so many wonderful places. So yeah, I'm actually doing a hiking challenge this summer. So I was just getting all the things together. And so I'm really excited to be doing that. So mountain fix coming on.
Nice. Very cool. Okay. And Courtney, after you introduce yourself, then you can take it away.
Sounds good. Well, my name is Courtney Martin. I'm a deputy district attorney here at Sacramento County, and I definitely pick the mountains. I love going to the mountains. I love going to Tahoe. In fact, my trial schedule just kind of cleared out probably for the next month or two, so I'm trying to plan a Tahoe trip now that I'll have a little bit of time. So yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and screen share my PowerPoint so you can all see it. And this is the Davis Club, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So
Very popular Davis Club.
yeah. And is there a different chapter for Sacramento, I would assume?
Yes, there's actually 3 or 4 chapters.
Okay, in Sacramento.
Sacramento. You may know Joanne Tremeling.
Yes, yes. I met a couple of times back when we were meeting in person for our SAC Together meetings. Yeah, and I'm going to talk about SAC Together, and I will say we do I mean, I'm mostly focusing on Sacramento, but we do collaborate with our surrounding counties pretty significantly. I work with the Yolo County DA that does human trafficking cases regularly. She's great. We work with Yolo County law enforcement, and then some of the other surrounding counties as well, San Joaquin County, Placer County. I haven't done much with El Dorado County, but you know, if they reach out, you know, we're kind of a hub because we're a bigger county. A lot of the issue is here, but that for sure trickles out into the surrounding areas. So, well, I wanted to just give a little bit of a background first on human trafficking, but that's not going to be the focus. But I do just want to make sure we're on the same page, you know, about where trafficking occurs and what it looks like in our county. So, you know, a lot of people have this misconception that human trafficking is kind of like the movie Taken, and there's people, you know, locked away in basements and getting shipped around the country in like cargo containers. And that's really not at all what human trafficking is. Human trafficking is, at least sex trafficking is basically forced prostitution. And then there's also the labor trafficking side as well, where it's, you know, forced labor. So a person doesn't have to be moved across state lines or cross borders to be, you know, forced to engage in sex work. In Sacramento County, we primarily focus on sex trafficking. That's just the tips that we get. That's the, you know, reports that come to us. And so that's what we end up prosecuting. If a labor trafficking case comes to us, we will happily prosecute it. Those tend to have a little bit different dynamic. So far, they've tended to go to federal prosecutors or to the Attorney General's office because successful labor trafficking cases really tend to be pretty big and a bit beyond the scope of what like local law enforcement can do. For example, my colleague at the Attorney General's office, she does labor trafficking, and she has like basically one case, and the county just can't afford to pay one prosecutor to do one case. So we have a more high volume caseload, and it really focuses on sex trafficking. So as you can see on this slide, sex trafficking takes place in a number of different contexts. There's the track, or could be called the stroll. Usually in the life, they call it the blade. In Sacramento County, we have a couple areas that are considered the blade. Stockton Boulevard is one, and then along Watt Avenue is another. In Yolo County, I think it's in West Sac, kind of just over the bridge. That's the area that might be considered kind of the stroll or the high prostitution area. But it's nothing like, for example, Stockton Boulevard. Also, lots of issues in hotels and massage parlors. And with massage parlors too, you know, it can be like your business front massage parlor, but it can also be a residence that's kind of posing as like a salon or a massage parlor, but then when you actually find out what's going on inside, it's prostitution as well. And then, as you know, the internet is really become probably, I would say, the primary ways that sex buyers and sex workers meet. And so it's also a primary way that exploiters take advantage of sex workers. So, and again, this is just by way of background because I'm going to focus mostly on what we're doing with SAC Together. But these victims do tend to follow a pretty similar, there's some generalizations that are very often true of them. So they have very similar profiles and some common risk factors. So they are primarily female. In this presentation, I will be most often referring to them as female, with the exploiters as male. It can definitely run the gamut. There's LGBTQ issues. There is, for sure, there's female exploiters and male victims, but the dynamics make it such that this is typically what we see. They always have issues with low self-esteem, almost always a history of sexual or physical abuse. And the sexual abuse component is really important, especially for younger victims, because it really conditions them to see themselves as an object of sexual gratification for older men. And so when an exploiter comes along, sex buyers come along and treat them that way, that's already normalized for them. So someone who hasn't been sexually abused is, when they start being treated as a sexual object, as like a 13 or 14-year-old, it's going to be really shocking for them. And they're probably going to try harder to get out of that situation. But a 13 or 14-year-old who's already been treated like that just thinks this is how adult men treat young girls. And so that's very common. They often come from difficult home background and maybe runaways, or they may have run away and they don't have anywhere to go back to. They're very often in the foster care system. And they do, initially often engage in sex work as a survival mechanism. And then sometimes there's addiction to narcotics at play as well. So, the way we kind of think about it is we're going in to do an interview with the victim, probably going to tick off a couple of these boxes when we start talking to them. And I will say on that addiction to narcotics aspect, there's kind of a misconception that that is a primary motivator for sex workers. But I find that that's not so. There's usually some substance abuse at play, but the psychology of, getting affection from an exploiter, trying to leave what's been a bad situation and find a better situation, that is a much more powerful factor for these victims than substance abuse, from what I see. So victim motivations, and this really gets into how the exploiters kind of get their hooks in these victims, and then what we have to do to try to put them in a safer place. Most often these victims, they're not like kidnapped off the street. They're groomed by an exploiter. So an exploiter meets them and promises them things, promises to, be their boyfriend, take care of them, make them a part of the family or group. And that's where it begins. And then the exploiter from there is able to figure out their kind of emotional pressure points and use that against them. So again, sometimes it's that they just need a place to stay or need some food because they're on the street. But often they're looking for the affection of their exploiter. Exploiters will often have a group of women and really portrays this as the family. You're part of the family when you're with me. And they'll call the other sex workers that are with him like the wifeys. A lot of, especially the younger victims, are looking for independence from the foster care system. Group homes are not good places to be. And so they're looking for a way out of that. They very much get addicted to the fast money. They could go work at the car wash and make $12 an hour, or they can do sex work and, make hundreds of dollars in a night. And so it's very hard, especially when there starts to become financial pressure points. The baby needs diapers, whatever it is. If they've gotten out of the life, it's just so easy to get sucked back in because they know they can make that money. Again, with their exploiter, he figures out whatever their dreams are. Maybe it's to have a family and a home. Maybe it's to live a glamorous lifestyle. And then he just keeps selling that to them. And then there certainly is the aspect of force and coercion. And often we see this dynamic where the exploiter initially uses grooming techniques that are more affectionate, and then starts increasingly to use violence and threats to keep the victim, to keep control of the victim. And then it becomes kind of like the cycle of violence and domestic violence, where it's like there might be threats and violence, and she may threaten to leave or try to leave, and then he goes back to kind of the affection. And so it really is very much like domestic violence. So that's just the introduction, and then we'll talk now about what Sacramento's doing. But any questions on any of that? I know that's probably review for a lot of you.
I just had a question or comment. I was surprised that you said that they actually make quite a bit of money. So maybe
Yes.
that's a misperception I had, that I kind of thought that they got nothing or just got survival, enough to survive on.
Right. And, because of the exploiter in the picture, a lot of times the victims are not keeping that money. But, once they get into this lifestyle, a lot of times what happens is these victims will be with an exploiter, and then something will happen. They leave the exploiter maybe goes to custody. And so now they're on their own for a little while and they're making that money. Sometimes the exploiter will let them keep some of that money. It really depends. But the overall fact is that there is a lot of money to be made. A girl probably in Sacramento on the street can make probably $500 in a night. In Oakland, where it's even busier, making $1,000 in a night is very realistic. So there's a lot of money. And in the bigger presentation that we do, we talk more about the demand side, because that's what's generating this problem, this human trafficking problem, is that lots and lots and lots of men are buying sex from very young girls. That's just the reality. And so, that money that feeds the system, it is a draw for both sex workers and for exploiters.
Well, thank you, Courtney. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah. Anything else?
Yeah, I heard somewhere that gangs are moving into trafficking.
Yeah, and that's been an issue for a long time, that gangs, see this as a revenue source. Drugs you sell once, and it's very high risk because they get caught with the drugs. But for gangs, they can resell a girl over and over again. They certainly have the structure in place to keep control of their victims. And then that also plays into the psychology of, like, if you're a victim with the gang, you're, again, kind of part of the family. You have maybe what's perceived as a support structure. And some of these neighborhoods where this is particularly an issue, there is a culture where their status being connected to the gang. So we're working on trying to develop more cases where we can show the gang aspect, if that's there. Right now, a lot of our detectives really specialize in human trafficking and aren't necessarily specialists in gangs. And so we're working on trying to bridge that gap so that when it comes to court, we have experts who can talk about the gang aspects to our cases, as well as the unique dynamics of human trafficking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else on the topic in general? Okay. Well, let's talk about SAC Together. So SAC Together was started in, I think, 2015. It was the first year that Anne-Marie was the DA. And it's a coalition of law enforcement, along with community-based organizations, that meets and collaborates to work on human trafficking issues. And the kind of keystone of our collaboration is a monthly meeting. 8 times a year, we meet just with law enforcement and public agencies, so CPS, county council, et cetera. And then 4 times a year, we meet with all our community-based organizations as well, along with the public defender's office. And so we have a large meeting. We've been meeting over Zoom during COVID, so we're looking forward to getting back to in person, because really this, the collaboration really works when people have actual relationships. And so Zoom, people kind of report what's going on, but it's not the same as, hanging out, having some cookies after, chatting about what's going on. So I'm very much looking forward to getting back to in person. I think that'll be a huge difference maker. Because where this collaboration happens is usually over, like, text on personal cell phones, like, oh, we need housing for this victim. Let's text Terry right now. So we need those personal relationships that we just don't get over Zoom. Our goal is, again, to work collaboratively to increase public awareness about human trafficking, and then also figure out how to serve victims of exploitation. So in terms of increasing public awareness, we do this in a variety of ways. And like for the DA's office, we have a speakers bureau. So if you request someone to come speak to you on any topic, the DA's office will try to send someone. And so for us at the DA's office, we've participated through the Speakers Bureau in all of these venues. Schools are a good one. Schools are actually mandated now to do some trafficking awareness as part of their curriculum. So more and more organizations are getting asked to do this. And I think last I knew, the Sheriff's Department was trying to develop really a curriculum with the school district to make this streamlined. We've seen a lot of success with raising awareness in hotels, because this is really where trafficking is happening. And so if we can get hotel staff to buy in and spot some of the red flags, I mean, they are great witnesses. Cases that are generated from staff being aware of this issue often end up being really successful. So a lot of my law enforcement folks have been out and about at hotels across the county doing trainings, and I've seen some real success from that. We also try to train law enforcement. The DA's office runs Citizens Academy, which is a 8-week course that citizens apply for and get education on a host of topics. And then Youth Academy is similar, but geared towards high school students. And all of those have happened this year over Zoom. So we've been glad to be able to continue to do that. Any questions about that, about kind of the public awareness aspect of what we do? The way this
Hi, it's Maggie. I'm sorry, my video's off. Can you speak a little more about the Youth Academy?
Yeah.
I have a daughter going into 9th grade who's a Girl Scout, and I'm just wondering what age you recommend and what the content is. And
Yeah.
we have another Girl Scout affiliated member online, so maybe that would be interesting to her as well.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I can send a link out after to our website that has some more information, but Youth Academy is, again, I think it's about 8 weeks. It's in the evenings after school, and they go over a lot of topics. There's traditionally been like 4 of them throughout the county. So you can sign up for the one that is, and I think there's an application process that's fairly simple, but they can apply for the one that's closest to them. And so they talk about things like domestic violence, cyber safety, the general court process. We also have Youth Shadow Day, which, again, this isn't specific to human trafficking, but youth apply and then can come and shadow an attorney, law enforcement, member of law enforcement, someone from the crime lab. They can choose really what they're most interested in and then shadow that person for a day. So I, again, can send out a link that has some more information about that from our DA website. I think it's typically a tad older than 8th grade, but the application process will say it. I think it's typically a little more like sophomores, juniors, seniors in high school. You know, there is some more mature content in some of this. So I think we're not hitting them too young. But I know iSmart too is a program that we do in schools, and I think that is for younger kids to be aware of cyber safety. So I can send out links to all those programs that we run here at the DA's office.
I have a quick question about that, just a quick follow-up. And this is just, I used to be a teacher, and I find that a lot of curriculum is about how to not be a victim, right? Like how to avoid cyberbullying, but a lot of it is not how to not be a perpetrator. You know what I mean? So are both topics covered? Like are young women told, you know, protect your bodies, and are also young men told, hey, don't exploit bodies?
Yeah, that's a good question. I can't say across the board. I think that there probably is a significant gap, like you're identifying there. One of my favorite presentations I get to do is there's a woman who teaches at Valley High who teaches a women's studies class, and so she has me and my investigator come, or at least before COVID, we came a number of times, and that was great because she talked to them. She started out talking about, you know, a lot of the problem with how women are treated is that they are objectified, and she talks about what that means and how objectification leads to violence because you no longer see this person as a person. And so like she's doing a great job of getting to the root of some of that does address both how women see themselves and how, you know, the men in her or the boys in her class should see them. won't come as any shock that there's not a lot of boys in her class. There's usually a few who are like the boyfriends of the girls who are taking the class. So no, I think you're probably identifying what is really a gap, and does need to be addressed. And really, you know, I said these classes are for older kids, but it does need to be addressed early, because if we're just starting to do this education, you know, when they're sophomores, then we're really too late. A lot of girls entering, you know, the life being trafficked are as young as 13. So, you know, so we don't want to wait, but probably, you know, there's going to be 13-year-olds that are just going to have their like hair blown back when they hear this. And then there's going to be girls who already have a lot of exposure to this at 13 and really need this information. So there's just a kind of a gap there. So,
Is there like a 1 hour or 45-minute presentation you can do for high school students? Because we do a monthly thing. We're hoping to get back into our continuation high school. And I think this topic would be a great session for our Dream It, Be It program. Are you, or do you have someone who could come? And it's because we do all students, whether they identify as male, female, or neither, or both, or whatever. So
yeah,
we could do a presentation to the entire, whoever's interested at King High.
Yeah, absolutely. Just, you can make a request through the Speakers Bureau, and we'll send somebody. And that's what's great too about SAC Together, is that like if you make a request through the Speakers Bureau, it'll probably be me or my investigator or both of us. You know, to really spread this, we have to have lots of people. And so SAC Together is great because, you know, if I'm not able to do it, I can reach out to one of our collaborative partners, and, you know, somebody will be able to do it. So absolutely make a request, and we're able to do a program that's, you know, within that time frame.
Thank you. That'd be great.
Yeah. So just briefly, what, you know, I'm going to talk now about kind of what each collaborative partner does and their role, and then some about how we interact. So at the district attorney's office, at least my role as the vertical prosecutor for the case, I get the case really even before law enforcement has finished their reports. I start hearing about it from them. These are complicated cases. I always compare it to domestic violence, where the report may come in and be like 20 pages. When my reports come in, they tend to be about 200 pages. So the great thing about being assigned full-time to human trafficking is that I get to start hearing about those investigations right at the beginning. So when I get the 200-page report, I'm kind of already up to speed as to what it's going to contain. It just helps me absorb it a lot more efficiently. So initially in the report, I'll start listening to, when law enforcement starts investigating, I'll start listening to victim interviews, reviewing search warrants, kind of giving directions on what I think is going to be the most important evidence, so law enforcement can hone in on that aspect of the case. And then ultimately they'll produce a report, send it to me, I'll make a filing decision, and then we'll go from there in terms of the court procedure. So at the beginning, we'll be addressing custody status. Is this defendant going to stay in custody? And we're typically arguing that he or she should stay in custody based on the nature of the crime. At that point, we'll be trying to resolve the case, see if there's a way to kind of spare the victim from having to testify, but that also, you know, it is a fair outcome, and make sure that the exploiter isn't able to continue his conduct. If he does want to fight the case, we'll usually go to a preliminary hearing, and then eventually a jury trial and sentencing after that. So again, I get the case from the very beginning all the way through sentencing, and that continuity is really important for these cases because they're big and complex. And I have 2 cases set for trial right now. I have more than that, but as an example, 2 of them that I have set for trial at the end of the summer, one has 5 victims and one has 7 victims. So these are cases that really require a huge amount of investment on the part of law enforcement and the DA's office. So I'm really grateful that the DA's office has designated resources so that I can be full-time doing this. And then it's also important to note our community prosecutors as well. They're kind of embedded with law enforcement in substations throughout the community. What's great about them is that even if we can't, say, prosecute an exploiter, we don't have enough evidence, they can hone in on problem areas and try to address that. So, for example, on Watt, our community prosecutor worked really hard to add some fencing to some problem areas and some lighting to some problem areas, and really just address that, the issue, kind of almost like through architecture as much as anything. And so they're out there being a representative of the office, but kind of in a non-traditional prosecutorial role. But because they're prosecutors, they have, the legal resources to back up what they're saying. If there's a business owner that is habitually violating the law, then they have some, there's some oomph there when they say you need to get in line. So we're really grateful for them, and it's particularly important in this issue. They can address some of those massage parlor issues, things like that. Yeah, Phyllis.
So Courtney, as these trials move forward, of the 5 victims and the 7 victims, what's being done with them in the meantime? They're vulnerable.
Yes. So I'm going to talk about that. But we have, well, I think we'll address this. If I haven't yet, by the end, we'll circle back.
Okay.
Because this is so that's really my role as the DA. But another important aspect of what our office does is we have victim advocates assigned to our cases. And they are the ones that bridge the gap between, the DA and law enforcement and the investigation, and then services for the victim. And what's so great about how our victim advocates in this caseload has traditionally functioned is that they come in right at the interview stage. And usually at the interview stage, that's like the crisis for the victim. They're reaching out to law enforcement because something really bad has happened. And so our victim advocate will even come to the interview, be there with law enforcement. And then as law enforcement's asking questions and trying to find out what happened and develop evidence for the case, the victim advocate is working on connecting that victim to resources. And so resources can include, housing. We have a safe house here in Sacramento, a couple of safe houses, but a few that we work with more than others. Medical assistance. Dignity Health has their medical safe haven, which is primarily focused on human trafficking victims and addressing their very specific medical needs. Substance abuse, addressing substance abuse issues, emergency housing, and they can connect them with vocational training. So the advocate is the one that's kind of right there on the ground in the crisis, starting to address that and then connect them to more long-term services. And then as the case proceeds, the advocate will keep them updated and also keep us in contact, because these victims have a background of complex trauma. And, it's not like we kind of get them and then it's just a straight path towards, a better life. There's very much a 1 step forward and 3 steps back kind of process. And for the case, we really want to stay in contact with them because we may ultimately need them to testify. So the victim advocates do a great job of helping us stay connected, both for the benefit of the victim and for the benefit of the case. I will say, if you know anyone who has an MSW and is interested, we right now we don't have a victim advocate. Ours left for a great opportunity at the state in March. So we are working on hiring, and it's a unique set of skills and a unique person that really wants to engage with victims that can, have some particular challenges. So if you know anyone, we are, I won't say desperate, but we are very eager to get someone on board here soon. They also have just some specific things. Actually, I think it was the Soroptimist that donated funds for us to have care backpacks for our victims that have things like clothes and feminine products and just things that they need, again, in that emergency crisis moment. A lot of times they contact law enforcement and they're basically in like lingerie, and like flip-flops. And so we get them, some clothes and some things just to make them more comfortable right in that moment. And then the victim advocate really does a great job of kind of buzzing around to all these different collaborative courts and collaborative meetings so that they can kind of report back and keep us informed while I have to be over in court and doing DA stuff. And then here are our, Phyllis.
Quick question. Can you say, you're just going to talk about your victim advocates right now? I see that on your slide. Okay.
Yeah, so Well, these are our community partners. So these are, when we talk about connecting our victims to resources in the community, this is kind of our top ones that we're usually talking about. Community Against Sexual Harm, CASH, is up there, and they are, I mean, I treat them as like a clearinghouse. If I am working with a victim, and maybe like right now, the victim advocate, there isn't one, and you know, we're kind of piecemealing it together, usually they're the first people I will reach out to. They're fantastic. And I'll talk about Reset in a moment. They're our community partner for Reset. City of Refuge is the safe house that CASH works with the most often. And they're a great resource. And then Weave also has some human trafficking resources, human trafficking specific. They're also obviously domestic violence. My sister's house, also primarily domestic violence, but has some specific human trafficking resources. And then Opening Doors, International Rescue Committee, those are, they work more on labor trafficking issues or issues with victims who weren't born here, immigrants. So again, I don't see those cases as much, so I don't work with them as much, but they're a great resource, because since we don't work with those victims a lot, when they do come along, it's like, okay, what do we do? So they're a fantastic resource. And then the UC Davis Care Center also helps staff our collaborative courts, which I will talk about now. So Reset is adult collaborative court when someone is arrested for prostitution. If we file charges, they'll come to court and they'll have an opportunity to have their case dismissed if they agree to participate in Reset. And so Reset, the things they have to do are participate in a 24-hour program, which is 20 hours of group classes and 5 hours of individual sessions. And then they also have the opportunity to engage whatever other resources that they need. And CASH does all that. So CASH offers the class, and CASH will connect them to any other resources they need to be successful. On the other hand, they have to abide by some conditions. They have to stay off the stroll, not pick up new cases, and also not be posting ads online. So it's kind of a carrot and a stick sort of model. We have lots of resources to help them, but there's also things that they need to be doing and not doing. It's been really successful. I think our recidivism rate is hovering around 5 to 6%. That started also in 2015. So for graduates, it really have seemed to be life-changing. And even for those who, like I said, one step forward, a couple steps back, maybe Reset doesn't mean that they get out of the life, but they connect with CASH. And so when they're ready to make changes, they know where to go. And I think those relationships that they build are absolutely the game changer that we see. And it's such a supportive class, court, and they come to court and the judge has cookies for them and gives them pep talks, and then we really celebrate when they graduate. So it's very inspiring. It's kind of the fun part of my job to get to see those graduations and hear their testimonials and how this has impacted them. And then Department 90 is a very similar model. It's for at-risk youth, and they do a lot of the same things, and even more wraparound services because they are juveniles. And then I wanted to just hit briefly on what law enforcement is doing. Do a lot of proactive operations. So I mentioned earlier that the demand side of this is really significant. And so we try to do a lot of demand-focused operations. In October, we do a big push where it's called Operation Hotspots, and agencies throughout the county participate. And I think last year we made 43 arrests for soliciting prostitution. So we're trying to show that the demand issue is what's driving this, and so those sex buyers can't operate with impunity, essentially. And then instead of making operations where we maybe arrest sex workers really about citation, we really do try to make it focused on meeting their needs, and really even now aren't really doing a lot of arrests. It's more about bringing them back to service center and connecting them with resources. And also in California, juvenile prostitution is not illegal. And so we don't make any arrests for juveniles for prostitution. Online operations and surveillance operations, those really focus on exploiters. So we're developing some great strategies for either posing as undercover sex workers that exploiters are reaching out to, and then making cases against them through the evidence we get from their conversations to us. And then similarly, we'll pose as maybe a sex worker or sex buyer, and then see if an exploiter will, for example, come pick us up. And then, and so that is kind of focused on surveillance in hotels and on the street. So those are exciting avenues because it makes it so that we can make cases against exploiters without necessarily having a victim having to testify. And that's such a big challenge in these cases. Lots of manpower so are required for those types of operations. So we're just always hoping and trying to make sure that law enforcement staffing their units that focus on human trafficking sufficiently so that we have that manpower. So when we get together for our SAC Together meetings, we're talking about all of this. All of these groups that I've mentioned are talking about what's going on, and we're making connections so that, for example, when we're doing proactive operations where we contact sex workers, we have people waiting back at the resource center from our community groups who are all ready to connect them with resources. So in our last couple of minutes here, I'll just let you guys let me know if there's any questions.
No? One question?
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. So for us to support these efforts, we've been real active with our backpacks in Yolo County, supplying them to, I guess you'd call them victim advocates that we partner with. Is there anything else we could be doing to support these efforts?
Yeah, well, a couple of things come to mind. I know, and I don't know if it's just the Sacramento chapter or if you folks were involved also, but I know the Soroptimist paid for the soft interview room at Sacramento Police Department to be basically refitted to make it a more comfortable environment for victims. And I've watched lots of interviews since then in that soft interview room, and it is just a great space. And so, you know, something like that in Yolo County. I know the Sheriff's Department doesn't have anything like that. So I think those funds were really put to good use. I've watched, you know, when I'm watching the audio video of these interviews, I'm watching, you know, in the middle of the night, a 15-year-old get interviewed and then fall asleep on that couch because it's way more comfortable than an interrogation room. And it makes them feel more comfortable to talk about what's going on. So it was a great avenue. I would say there's probably more opportunity for that. Another thing, you know, if there's financial resources or you're able to raise financial resources, one thing we've talked about needing is when victims are contacted initially, they a lot of times have a cell phone that has lots of evidence on it. And when we talk to them about taking their phone so we can download it and giving it back to them a few days later, it's very challenging because that phone is their lifeline. And a lot of times we're having a great interview, they're giving lots of information, building good rapport, building trust. And then when we start talking about taking that phone, you know, understandably, they kind of freak out. And so right now we're trying to figure out a way to get some money so that our detectives can take a course so that they can download those phones right there. And I think that the course is about $3,000. That was the last thing that we heard. So that's a really specific need. And when people ask us what we need, you know, I'm just going to say it. That's something that we would love to have. And if they could take that course, then they would be able to take that phone right then, download it, and give it back to the victim. And not only would we get the evidence, but that victim would be able to keep that lifeline there. And also, we don't kind of you know, tear down the trust that we've spent now hours building by saying like, oh, by the way, we need to take the one thing that really helps, that you feel like helps keep you safe. So those are a couple really specific things.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It helps. I know when people ask that, it's like, how specific do you want me to be?
Yeah, well, that's good. I'll probably be in touch with Joanne Tremeling.
Yeah.
And, see what they're doing.
Yeah.
And maybe we could see what's possible here in Yolo County too.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure they have very similar needs as us. And like I said, they're doing a great job. We work with them a lot. They're probably my favorite county. I really like Rachel Resnick is the DA there, or Rachel Raymond, and she's just great. So you guys have a good deal going on there.
Yeah, unfortunately, their meeting is going on right now. So
okay.
We're missing it, but
yeah,
we know how to get in touch with them.
Yeah.
Pick their brains as well as to see, what might be needed that we could do.
Yeah, definitely. And at some point, I think we have still quite a few backpacks, but at some point we'll need more. And I know some of the agencies have wanted backpacks, like the DA's office advocates have them, but some of the agencies have asked if it would be possible for them to have backpacks too.
So if you could send us the agencies who requested backpacks,
yeah,
we could talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I know Elk Grove mentioned it, so I'll put you guys in touch.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to get off. I had to move a couple things around, so I have another meeting to go to, but thank you guys so much. And I will follow up a little bit later this afternoon. I'll send an email with some of those links to some of our programs at the DA's office, and then also put you in touch with Elk Grove since they specifically mentioned backpacks. So thank you guys so much. Oh, and I'll stop screen sharing.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yep. All right. You guys have a great day. Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, Courtney.
Oh, how do I get? Let's see.
And I guess the next Sacramento Together will be June 1st. So we'll see you then.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, great.
Food for thought.
Definitely. And I think that gives anti-trafficking some idea of maybe ways to use funds next year. So, to make a bigger impact. That's great.
Where can we pull $3,000? We could be doing something, next week to make a difference. Do we have any money left in our 2020-21 budget as we come to the end of the year?
We'd have to ask Heather, but Leah?
So Phyllis, we're Yolo County. So
right.
Do we need to have the sheriff come in and do we interview him on what's going on? I mean, I like to keep our funds local and get things going here.
I understand. And it would be the Yolo Sheriff's Department that we would approach for a possible soft interview room. Could make a project out of that. We could team up with Woodland.
Yeah.
And Greater Davis.
Right.
Not take it on ourselves. Also look at what kind of funds we have, if there's anything left over. That would call for bringing in our finance team. The financial support for this course on cell phone downloading. See if Yolo County needs that. So we could, help the greater effort, but keep it, as you say, local.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, we'll after the retreat and after committees kind of turn in their things, I think it's okay to wait until we have a final budget and we see how much money we made this, so it's not, it's urgent, but I don't think if it doesn't happen tomorrow, it's not gonna,
But in the meantime, I can reach out to CSEC and the Sheriff's Department and
see what their needs are locally. I think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay. Do we have any committee reports? Coming up on the end of the year, so I would think things are wrapping up. Okay, great. Do we have any announcements?
a question. When's the next retreat?
Oh, we don't have a date for that yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the joint board meeting, what's that joint with?
That's the old board and the new board.
Okay.
Yeah.
And installation is still June 22nd?
Yes, as far as, yeah, that hasn't been nailed down, but I think Catherine's sending an email.
Okay.
Good question.
Do we still need blue streaks for our hair?
I have no idea. I think you're on that committee though, right, Phyllis? The installation committee?
Am I?
I thought you said that you would do it. Catherine has the list. You'll get an email if you are. About that. Okay, great. Are there any other announcements? Who's planning to come to the picnic in the park next Wednesday? At Davis Farmers Market.
All the way from Hawaii, Diana?
I'm coming back on Saturday, so I'll be there. Might be a little sleepy, but I'll be there.
Okay. Does anyone want to share anything that they are happy about? Diana, first.
I'm super happy to finally see my new house that we bought in January. In person, and Ken and I really love it. We feel like we lucked out. And I was talking to a real estate friend of mine here, and she says the value since we bought it has probably gone up like $100,000.
Wow.
Wow.
Market here it's crazier here than it is there.
Wow.
Wow.
That's officially crazy.
That
Yeah.
is
Good
super-
for you.
Yeah. Not that we're gonna sell it. We love it. So.
Meredith?
I'm just happy I made it and I gotta log off, but thanks so much.
Thanks, Maggie.
Bye.
Meredith, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I'm happy we're moving to WordPress.
For those of you that don't know, the board had a special board meeting last night and we're moving our website hosting, I think that's the word, I don't know, from Wix to WordPress, which Meredith has really wanted for a little while now. So
Did you say that? What did you say?
We're moving our website to WordPress, and I'm very, very happy about it. If you can't tell by how red my face is.
Well, if you're happy, we're happy, Meredith.
Yeah.
That's right.
I don't know what you're talking about, but if you're happy, we're happy.
Yeah,
There you go.
get over here.
I have one happy thing.
Okay.
My grandson turned 3 today.
Oh.
Oh,
We've been celebrating for like the last couple of days, but he officially turned 3 today.
Oh.
So
That's great.
nice. Happy birthday. Whew.
Is anyone
I know
up
what
at
I'm
4
happy
o'clock in the morning to see the super flower full moon?
no.
I've seen pictures. I was not going to be up at 4 in the morning, but I've seen pictures. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, me too. I guess I'm happy that my zucchinis are popping right now. There's tons of them, so there's going to be a lot of zoodles in my future.
Pretty sure there's a cookbook called Zoodles.
I'm sure there is. There's a lot of different ways to use them, folks.
Oh, yeah. Starting with the doorstop.
You're not a zucchini fan?
I am, but
Yeah,
I have,
zucchini chocolate cake.
yes. I reach a threshold.
Yeah. I
And
hear
then
you. There's. Okay, great. Well, if there is nothing else anyone wants to share, we'll go ahead and log off a little bit early, which
Thank
know,
you.
We'll go on
Okay.
with our days.
Yeah.
Thank
See
you.
you next week. Those
See you
of who are
next week.
coming. Bye.